The first time a package went missing, I assumed it was the delivery guy messing up. The second time, I blamed the mailroom or porch pirates or maybe even myself for misclicking the shipping address like an idiot. But the third time, when I stood staring at the fresh footprint on my welcome mat and the faint outline of a recently removed cardboard box, I realized someone was helping themselves to my online shopping. That someone turned out to be Karen, my neighbor with the platinum blonde bob and the sparkling white SUV that she polished more often than she brushed her own dog. I didn't have proof. I had annoyance simmered into suspicion. So I did what any rational, extremely online millennial would do. I installed a doorbell camera. The kind that advertises, crystal clear detail day or night. And oh boy did it deliver. 2 days later, a package from my mom disappeared. I opened the camera app with a sinking feeling. There she was, Karen, marching up to my porch like she owned the deed to my life. She bent down, scooped the box up like she was rescuing a puppy, then strutted back to her SUV with a swagger that dared the universe to challenge her. I stared at the screen, a mix of vindication and outrage bubbling together. I replayed the footage 3 times, each viewing raising my blood pressure. I texted my friend Jake, "Neighbor is stealing my packages." He responded instantly, "Karen?" Apparently everyone has a Karen. Mine just happened to be named Karen. I walked next door, ready to confront. Except the moment Karen answered the door, she was syrup-sweet politeness. I told her a package of mine had gone missing. Her eyes widened dramatically. She gasped like a soap actress. "Oh no. You poor thing." She put a hand on her chest. She asked what was inside. My answer was vague because it was socks. Not exactly the emotional punch I'd hoped for. She promised to keep an eye out. She even patted my upper arm like I was a fragile woodland creature. I left her porch frustrated but not defeated. Instead, I started documenting every stolen item, every timestamp, every smug little smirk she gave her friends while they chatted by her SUV. After 2 weeks, I had enough footage to make a suburban true crime documentary. Jake suggested I go to the police. But I wanted something better. Something poetic. Something that would make her stop permanently. It started when Jake sent me a link titled, Porch Pirate Dye Bomb Kit. A harmless package filled with neon dye that explodes the moment someone tampers with it. We spent an evening assembling it with the seriousness of 2 scientists building a nuclear device. The instructions said, "Best used when you know exactly who the thief is." Oh, I knew. The next morning, I placed the decoy box on my porch. It sat there for all of 30 minutes before a familiar white SUV rolled past. It slowed. Stopped. Karen emerged wearing oversized sunglasses like she was undercover. She marched up, scooped the box, did a paranoid shoulder check that missed the very obvious camera, and hurried to her trunk. I could barely contain my excitement as I watched. Then it happened. The moment she yanked the tape, the box detonated in a glorious explosion of neon pink dye. A cloud the color of bubblegum on steroids engulfed the trunk. The SUV's pristine white paint swallowed streaks of fluorescent disaster. Karen shrieked like a startled seagull. She flailed uselessly as the dye clung to her like static cling from hell. She slammed her trunk shut, but the damage was done. Bright pink stains dripped down the once shining metal like paint on a tragic art installation. I couldn't stop laughing. Jake wheezed beside me, clutching his stomach. The footage was gold. Oscar-worthy. Internet-breaking. But then the real comedy began. Karen spotted my camera. Her eyes narrowed into furious little laser beams. She stomped toward my house, pink footprints marking her path on the sidewalk. She pounded on my door like she was auditioning to be a SWAT battering ram. I opened it, phone in hand recording. She shrieked about vandalism, sabotage, toxins, and threatened to sue me for property destruction. I stayed calm, sarcastic, perfectly reasonable. I politely suggested she explain to the police why she was opening my packages. She froze like a deer in fluorescent headlights. Then she turned and stormed off, leaving a trail of pink fury in her wake. That was only day one. Things did not de-escalate. By that evening, the entire cul-de-sac had seen her SUV. People pretended not to stare, but everyone stared. Kids on bikes slowed down to gawk. Mrs. Gutierrez from across the street laughed so hard she nearly dropped her gardening shears. Karen scrubbed and power washed, but neon pink is the most stubborn color invented by humans. Her vehicle now looked like a flamingo in witness protection. You would think getting caught red-handed, well, pink-handed, would end the petty criminal career. But Karen wasn't built like that. She was fueled by entitlement and bad decisions. The next morning, she was outside yelling at the HOA president, demanding security patrols for porch theft prevention. She claimed she was a victim of escalating crime. She pointed at my house while ranting, implying I was harboring dangerous thugs, despite the fact that the only things entering my porch lately were cardboard boxes and spiders. The HOA, bless their useless hearts, took her concerns very seriously because Karen donated to every seasonal community fundraiser and baked cookies for meetings. That afternoon, I received a letter threatening fines for unsecured deliveries causing neighborhood distress. My packages, which I paid for, were apparently eyesores that provoked crime. My rage simmered into something sharp and patient. I considered sending the footage to the HOA, but that would be too easy. I wanted the truth to unravel in a way that left no wiggle room for Karen to spin her narrative of suburban martyrdom. So I upgraded my plan. More cameras, better vantage points, and instead of stopping online orders, I increased them. I ordered things I didn't even need. Replacement toaster knobs, a bulk pack of rubber ducks, a subscription box of novelty socks featuring Angry Cat. I became Amazon's favorite customer. Predictably, packages kept vanishing. And every time I saved the footage, Karen got sneakier. Hats, scarves, sunglasses the size of her ego, but she couldn't hide the fact that her porch pirate career continued. Her SUV remained pink, but she operated with new determination, like a villain who really wanted that sequel movie deal. I waited, documented, collected, because if she wanted to escalate, I would escalate higher. She just didn't know she'd already walked into a trap much bigger than neon dye. Soon, everyone would know exactly who had been stealing from whom, and no fake concern or HOA tantrum could save her reputation anymore. Wait for it. Karen didn't speak to me for a week after the Dye Bomb Day massacre. She kept her distance, washing her pink-spotted SUV like an obsessive cleaner with a vendetta against pigment. But silence wasn't surrender. Silence was strategy. And Karen was planning something. I found out when I came home one afternoon to a notice taped dramatically to my door. HOA infraction, excessive package deliveries. A warning that further clutter would result in fines. Karen must have sprinted home from the meeting squealing with victory. I almost admired her persistence. Almost. I peeled the notice off, tossed it into my recycling bin, and smiled. She thought bureaucracy could outmaneuver me. I had footage. I had patience. And I had a doorbell camera that never blinked. The next morning, I wore my most neutral expression while retrieving yet another package. Karen lurked by her hedges, pretending to trim them. I waved cheerfully. Her clippers froze mid-snip. Her eyes tracked the box in my hands like a hawk tracking prey. When I closed my door, I checked the camera feed. She marched right up to the porch the moment I was out of sight. She stood there glaring at the door like she expected it to magically spit the package back out. She was escalating in weird ways. The following day, I caught her peeking through my living room window. I opened the blinds and waved again. She jumped back like she'd been caught rummaging through an ancient curse box. My friend Jake found the whole thing deliciously entertaining. "You're living in a sitcom," he said, munching chips while I showed him the latest footage. "What's the next step? Glitter cannons? A decoy safe full of spiders?" I didn't answer him. Because the truth was, I already had a plan. A long game. And it required one more theft. I ordered something special. A small, battery-powered GPS tracker hidden inside a fake electronics box. If Karen stole it, I could trace her stash. Based on statistics and my own petty instinct, she wasn't stealing packages for need. She was hoarding them. A dragon guarding cardboard treasure. The bait sat on my porch like a shiny gold coin. Her SUV rolled around the block twice before she found the courage. Sunglasses, baseball cap, hoodie pulled up, she looked like she was auditioning for Criminal Mastermind, the PDA edition. She grabbed the package and bolted back to her car. Jake and I watched excitedly from inside. Tracker activated, I whispered, tapping the app. A blinking dot appeared, moving slowly as she parked behind her house. Then the dot stopped. We waited. The tracker stayed put. You think she's got a stash in her garage? Jake asked. Oh, she has something, I replied. We just need to prove it. I spent 2 days gathering indisputable evidence. Video clips, screenshots, delivery confirmations, everything organized neatly into a presentation labeled Operation Pink Justice. But the universe decided to accelerate things for me. There was a community yard sale scheduled that weekend. Everyone on the street participated, even those who hated clutter. I walked outside Saturday morning, ready to browse for ironic decor, and nearly dropped my coffee. There, under a white tent in Karen's driveway, was a table loaded with my stuff. Not all of it, but enough to make my jaw clench. A VR headset I'd replaced. A boxed set of kitchen knives that never got delivered. A limited edition comic hardcover. And the socks. My God, the socks. Stacks of novelty socks in perfect rows, tagged with price stickers. I approached like a calm storm. Karen beamed as she recognized me, unaware the storm's surge was rising. Good morning, she chirped. Looking to shop local? Her voice was saccharine enough to rot my teeth. I picked up the comic and inspected the price tag. $20, I said slowly. It originally cost me $60. Karen blinked. I'm sorry. I said it cost me $60. When I bought it. With my money. People browsing nearby paused. Karen's cheerful mask cracked. Oh, you must be mistaken. A donation box was mistakenly delivered to my house a while back. Isn't it just lucky that I decided to resell it to benefit the community? I smiled wider than I ever had. Super lucky. Especially since I have video of you stealing these from my porch. Silence landed like a brick. Her face tightened. She scanned the small crowd. He's making up stories, she announced. You know how some people are. She said it in a tone that implied I was deranged and dangerous. I tapped my phone screen. The Bluetooth connection synced instantly with the portable speaker I had brought, just in case. The yard sale now echoed with high-definition audio of Karen's own voice saying, "Ooh, this one feels expensive," followed by her laugh as she lifted a box from my porch 2 weeks earlier. The accompanying video played on my screen for anyone who wanted a visual. The crowd shifted. Whispers rose like sparks. Karen lunged for the phone, but I stepped backward. Careful, I said. Wouldn't want you to get more dye stains. A few neighbors snorted. Her composure disintegrated. She sputtered excuses about community safety and porch hazards and misunderstanding the delivery system. Each lie tangled with the previous one. More neighbors gathered, judgment dripping from their expressions. Jake raised his voice from behind me. How about we check your garage? That's where the tracker pinged. Karen froze. The pink stains left on her car weren't the only things exposed now. The HOA president, Mr. Clipboard, stepped forward. His stern face suggested a toddler who'd been denied candy too many times in life. We'll conduct an inspection immediately, he declared, chest puffed up like a pigeon. Karen opened her mouth, closed it, then grabbed onto a final flimsy defense. You have no right to search my property. Mr. Clipboard smirked with the self-importance only HOA presidents understand. Actually, your signed agreement allows entry when community violations are suspected. He gestured dramatically. Like theft. Karen stuttered, suddenly remembering all the fine print she weaponized against everyone else. She reluctantly opened her garage. It was like unearthing a suburban Atlantis. Boxes. Dozens of them. Some unopened. Others half picked through. Electronics. Clothing. Small appliances. A mountain of stolen goods, arranged like trophies. Neighbors gasped. A few recognized items immediately. Mrs. Gutierrez screamed when she spotted her missing Christmas decorations piled behind Karen's Costco shelving unit. Karen's voice cracked. I was holding them for return. I was trying to protect the neighborhood. People would panic if they knew porch pirates were active. Jake laughed so hard he bent over. Even Mr. Clipboard struggled to maintain a serious face. A police officer arrived after a convenient 911 call from someone who definitely wasn't me but might have been someone very close to me. The cops started inventorying the stash. Karen argued until her voice turned shrill enough to shatter future evidence. I stood aside, recording everything, calm as a deep lake. Not triumphant yet, just patient. That's the thing Karen never understood. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to accuse. I let her own actions do the talking. And they were speaking loud and clear now. The officer asked if anyone could identify property. Hands went up like we were in school. My VR headset, my knives, my socks, yes, the socks, were counted and placed into evidence bags. Karen began crying. Not remorseful crying. Angry crying. The kind that says, I'm the victim here. She sobbed about reputations and misunderstandings, about how she was framed, about how neon pink was an act of targeted harassment. The officer ignored her. So did the neighbors. And the HOA president who had once adored her baked cookies? He stepped back like she was radioactive. It would have been satisfying enough right there. But the best part was still ahead. Because pink SUVs aren't just hard to clean. They're impossible to forget. Karen disappeared for 2 days after the great garage reveal. Not physically, her neon pink SUV remained parked in her driveway like a massive, guilty highlighter, but she did not show her face outside. Curtains drawn. Porch dark. No hedge trimming reconnaissance. Nothing. That should have been the end of it. The police documented everything. The HOA backed off their ridiculous complaint against me. The neighbors finally knew who their real porch pirate was. Her reputation should have dissolved like cheap paper in a rainstorm. And yet, Karen was not a retreating type. She was a regrouping type. The kind of person who saw consequences as temporary inconveniences. I should have predicted the next move. On the third day, I woke to the sound of pounding again, not on my door this time, but outside on the street. I peeked through the blinds. A towing company was hooking Karen's pink SUV to a truck. Apparently, when a police report includes the words stolen property, insurance companies suddenly care a whole lot about investigating claims related to vandalism. Karen stormed outside in her robe, screaming about injustice and loyalty and how she was a valued customer. The tow driver listened with the exhausted patience of a man who dealt with one too many early morning Karens. I noticed something else. The HOA president, Mr. Clipboard, stood nearby watching. He looked oddly smug, which suggested Karen's HOA influence had evaporated faster than the pink dye solvent she'd ordered in desperate bulk. Karen eventually slunk back inside, defeated for the moment. No car. No leverage. The street exhaled in quiet satisfaction. But that evening, I found a message in my mailbox. An anonymous note, printed, not handwritten. Remove your cameras. They invade privacy. No signature. No envelope. Just a cheap sheet of printer paper and the same energy as a ransom letter drafted by someone with a grudge. There were only 2 people this could come from. Karen or Karen. Her idea of subtlety was using block letters instead of cursive. I taped the note to my fridge under a magnet shaped like a grumpy cat. Trophy acquired. The next day, 2 police officers knocked on my door. They politely asked to review my footage again. Karen was claiming the garage items appeared overnight via a break-in. I barely held my laughter in check. I gave them every clip they requested, labeled neatly by date and timestamp. One officer muttered, "Yeah, she's stretching." The other rolled his eyes. They left with a small smile and a flash drive containing Karen's greatest hits. I felt lighter than air. Jake, meanwhile, was annoyed the drama might calm down. "We need a grand finale," he said while scrolling through meme templates to immortalize Karen's SUV. "Something she can't slither out of." I didn't disagree. Karen had a way of twisting anything into a pity narrative. In her mind, the dye bomb wasn't a response to her theft. It was an unprovoked assault. The yard sale wasn't a front for stolen goods. It was community service. The garage stash wasn't her trophy room. It was evidence of a porch crime wave she heroically interrupted. Reality was optional to her. Then the HOA sent a new announcement. Neighborhood meeting Thursday evening, topic: crime prevention and community harmony. Translation: a chance for Karen to stage a comeback and paint herself as a misunderstood guardian angel. I needed to make sure that didn't happen. Thursday arrived. The entire block gathered on the cul-de-sac. Folding chairs formed a loose circle. The HOA board sat in the center like judges in a very petty trial. Karen emerged from her house dressed in business casual armor. Hair perfect. Makeup flawless. If not for the streaks of stubborn pink still clinging to the edges of her shoes, you might think nothing had happened at all. Mr. Clipboard opened the meeting with a monotone speech about unity and stolen goods. Karen raised her hand first. Of course she did, and launched into a dramatic monologue about vigilance and sacrifice. She framed herself as the one who noticed the problem before anyone else. She even shed tears on cue. Some neighbors shifted uncomfortably. Others seemed unsure who to believe. People have short memories, especially when a good storyteller is involved. Karen was a manipulator. A practiced one. Jake whispered, "She's rewriting history in real time." I stared at her, calm but calculating. Karen ended her speech by blaming technological surveillance paranoia for dividing the community. Her eyes flickered to me with theatrical hurt. "Not everyone wants to live under constant observation," she said. "Especially when that footage is misinterpreted. We all make mistakes." I stood up before she could continue her redemption arc. "Question," I said, raising my hand like a polite student. "If someone makes a mistake once, that's understandable. Twice, okay. But 3 dozen times." Karen paled. I walked to the front with a smile, holding a small remote. I prepared something for the meeting. The HOA president gave a hesitant nod. Jake grinned like a kid waiting for fireworks. The portable projector whirred to life against the side of Mr. Patel's garage. And then, one by one, the clips played. High-resolution footage of Karen's greatest porch pirate performances. The gasping theatric. The not-so-subtle glances. The triumphant march back to her SUV. The day she tripped over her own flip-flop and fell into my recycling bin. The security footage captured everything. The neighbors laughed. Some outright howled. The audio echoed across the cul-de-sac like a guilty conscience amplified through Dolby Surround. Karen squeaked, "This is harassment. It's illegal to film me without consent." One of the cops from earlier, who happened to live 5 houses down, cleared his throat loudly. "Public-facing property is legally recorded," he said, not bothering to hide his smirk. Karen's eyes darted desperately from face to face. The audience she once commanded now judged her openly. In every direction, a wall of skepticism and amusement. Mrs. Gutierrez raised her hand. "Can you play the part where she takes my inflatable snowman?" So I did. The crowd erupted again. Even the stoic HOA board snickered. Karen stumbled backward, retreating like a melting snowman in sunlight. Her voice cracked into a shrill mix of outrage and humiliation. "This neighborhood is toxic," she screamed. "You're all ungrateful." She spun on her heel and marched away, but not before tripping over the curb, catching herself in a graceless flail. The meeting resumed without her, everyone buzzing with catharsis. Jake elbowed me. That, he whispered, was majestic. But there was still one loose thread. Where did all the stolen packages go before the garage stash? The tracker only revealed one location, but there had been dozens more before that. I couldn't shake the suspicion that Karen's hoarding wasn't contained to her property. Later that night, I checked the GPS app again. The dot blinked. Not at her house this time. It had moved across the street, toward a shed behind the old oak tree. "Jake," I said quietly, "you seeing this?" He leaned over my shoulder. "Oh, that's juicy. So Karen wasn't finished. Or maybe she was running a bigger operation than we realized. Either way, the story wasn't over. Some criminals choose revenge. Others choose panic cleanup. Karen chose both. And that made her unpredictable. The neon SUV was gone. Her reputation was wrecked. But Karen still had secret. And I was going to dig every single one of them up. Jake and I stared at the blinking tracker dot behind the old oak tree like it was a treasure map leading straight into absurdity. The shed behind that tree belonged to Mr. and Mrs. Harper, a quiet retired couple who mostly gardened and occasionally yelled at squirrels. If anyone in the neighborhood was the last person I'd suspect of involvement in a petty suburban crime ring, it was them. They probably apologized to plants when they pruned them. But the tracker didn't lie. Karen must have stashed boxes there either before the garage or after the police made that stash too hot to handle. Either way, I wasn't going to make assumptions. I wanted evidence. Solid. Clean. Ironclad. The kind that hits harder than neon dye. Jake suggested we sneak over immediately. He was already halfway into his sneakers like a raccoon preparing for a heist. "No," I said. "We do this the right way." Jake groaned. "Since when are you allergic to fun?" "I'm allergic to trespassing charges," I replied. So I called the police officer from earlier, the one who lived down the street and now recognized me as that guy with the pink SUV neighbor. He arrived with his partner, both curious and slightly amused by the new development. I showed them the tracker app. They raised eyebrows. "Okay, that's probable cause to investigate," the officer said. "But we'll knock first." They approached the Harpers' front door respectfully. Mrs. Harper answered wearing gardening gloves and confusion. When the officer explained the situation, she gasped so hard I feared she'd inhale her bouquet. "Oh heavens," she said, motioning frantically toward the shed. "Please, take whatever you need." The shed door creaked open like a suspense movie prop. And inside, jackpot. Stacks of packages. Labels addressed to half the street. Some dating back months. Karen had been using the sweetest old couple in the neighborhood as storage mules. Mrs. Harper looked horrified. She told us the deliveries were charity donations she was organizing, she whispered, hands trembling. She said she needed a safe place while she sorted them. Jake shook his head. She weaponized the elderly. The officers photographed everything and logged it into their growing case file. Mrs. Harper apologized repeatedly, tears welling up. I reassured her she had nothing to be sorry for. She'd been conned by a master manipulator with a bleach-blonde bob and a bottomless sense of entitlement. As the officers removed the boxes, Karen stormed out of her house like a banshee in yoga pant. She screeched across the lawn, pointing at me as if I'd personally declared war on her lifestyle brand. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she yelled, closing the distance with wild steps. "That is my property." The lead officer turned slowly. "Ms. Thompson, these items are marked with the names and addresses of your neighbors." Karen blinked rapidly. "Miss Prince," she insisted. "They shipped wrong. I was fixing it." Jake coughed the word, sure, into his fist. Karen swung toward Mrs. Harper. "You gave them permission to touch my donations?" Mrs. Harper straightened, suddenly fierce. "Don't you dare turn this around on me, young lady," she snapped. "You lied to us. You lied to everyone." Karen's mouth worked like a malfunctioning puppet. Then she spun around and stomped back to her house, slamming her door with enough force to rattle the window frames. The police loaded the recovered packages into their vehicle and promised to return everyone's rightful goods after documentation. Justice felt close now, like the final match about to drop on a soaked fuse. But Karen still had cards to play. The next morning, she called an emergency HOA board session. Rumors spread fast. Apparently, Karen now intended to claim emotional distress, stalking, and technological aggression. Yes, really. She wanted my cameras banned and my harassment investigated. She was trying to rebrand herself as a victim of organized persecution. Jake clapped sarcastically when we heard. She's speedrunning all 5 stages of Karen grief, he said. Denial, blame, escalation, meltdown, lawsuit. I would have laughed if it didn't mean she was trying to turn the HOA into her personal revenge squad again. I'd shut her down twice, but Karen didn't accept defeat. She remodeled it and kept going. So I prepared for the meeting armed with more evidence than the entire cast of CSI. When evening came, the HOA board sat with stiff seriousness, as if preparing to settle a border dispute between nations. Neighbors filled the room, some eager for drama, others exhausted by it. Karen sat beside the board, posture rigid, hair shellacked into perfection, eyes sparkling with artificial innocence. She spoke first. And wow, did she perform! She accused me of orchestrating a targeted harassment campaign. She claimed my cameras were collecting facial data. She said I manipulated footage and planted evidence. She even insinuated I was behind the die on her SUV. The board listened politely, though several neighbors visibly rolled their eyes. Then it was my turn. I stood calmly. No shouting. No dramatics. I simply connected my phone to the TV and played the tracker footage showing her opening the GPS package and taking it right to the Harper's shed. Clear. Undeniable. Time-stamped. Karen shrieked, "That proves nothing." The cop in the back raised his coffee cup in a silent salute to me. I continued presenting. Porch footage, photos of stolen items recovered from her garage and the shed, and statements from neighbors. Fact by fact, lie by lie, I dismantled her version of reality. By the time I finished, Karen's expression had cracked into something brittle and wild. She slammed her hands on the table. "Fine," she yelled. "You want the truth?" I took the packages because they were left out too long. They cluttered up the neighborhood. I was helping. The room went silent. Mrs. Gutierrez whispered, "You stole my holiday wreath for 6 months." It clashed with the HOA aesthetic. Karen snapped. Laughter burst around the room like firecrackers. Even the board members couldn't hide their amusement anymore. Karen's face flushed tomato red. "This is a witch hunt. I have never felt less supported in my life." Then she unleashed the nuclear meltdown. "I hate this community. You're all small-minded idiots with terrible taste and cheap lawn ornaments. I should have moved to a better neighborhood when I had the chance." Someone in the back started clapping slowly. Others joined. A standing ovation for her exit. Karen's meltdown was complete. She stormed out of the meeting, pushing through the doors like she expected them to explode on contact. The pink stains still clinging to her shoes marked her path like a symbolic trail of shame. The HOA president cleared his throat. "Motion to ban Ms. Thompson from holding any future board positions?" Every hand shot up. Jake whispered, "She just executed the world's most dramatic self-own." It should have felt like victory. But something still gnawed at me. Because Karen didn't exit like someone defeated. She exited like someone plotting a sequel. And she had just lost everything that mattered to her: power, reputation, control. People like Karen don't accept consequences. They retaliate. That night, I checked my cameras before bed. All quiet. All calm. But a small pink footprint on my driveway told a different story. Karen wasn't done. And neither was I. The pink footprint faded by morning, washed into a faint smear by dew and car tires. Jake insisted it meant nothing. "She probably walked by," he said. "Maybe she was crying and pacing dramatically in the moonlight like a discount soap opera villain. Maybe. but the timing gnawed at me. Karen had just lost her social status, her stolen loot, her beloved SUV. Her only remaining asset was pettiness. And that was the one thing she had in bottomless supply. I upgraded the cameras again. More angles, infrared, motion alerts set to trigger for anything larger than a squirrel. I wasn't taking chances with a cornered Karen. The neighborhood slowly returned to normal. Packages arrived and actually stayed where they landed. People walked their dogs past Karen's house without changing sides of the street. Some even waved at me, grateful I'd solved what had secretly been affecting them too. Karen, meanwhile, lurked behind closed blinds. Until she didn't. One afternoon, I came home to find a crowd gathered near my mailbox. Something was taped to it, a bright neon poster board with giant letters written in fury. "Thief lives here. He spies on women. Beware." Underneath were printed pictures of me, screenshots from my own security footage she must have stolen during one of her sneaky recon missions. Grainy freeze frames of me retrieving packages, distorted by poor lighting, turned into fear-mongering propaganda. My jaw clenched so tight it hurt. Neighbors stared awkwardly, some already pulling the signs down. Mrs. Gutierrez tore one cleanly in half. "Ridiculous," she muttered. Jake arrived minutes later and saw the scene. "Oh wow," he said. "She went full libel. That's bold." I removed the signs carefully, bagging them like evidence. The police came again. They sighed like tired parents having to lecture the same stubborn child for the 10th time. They assured me they'd talk to her. That harassment would not be tolerated. They said the case against her was already growing teeth. Still, Karen wasn't arrested. She retreated behind her front door, but I knew that quiet wasn't peace. It was pressure building. That night, I slept lightly. At 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion alert. Karen was on my lawn. The night vision camera showed her creeping toward my porch. Hood up, gloves on, carrying a pair of heavy-duty bolt cutters. She didn't even hesitate. She clamped them around the cable of my doorbell camera and snapped it clean. Then she moved on to the next one. I watched through a live feed as each screen went dark one by one. Jake, who was sleeping on my couch because he didn't want to miss the finale, sat bolt upright as the alerts kept chiming. She's cutting the cameras? That's wow. She's playing for keeps. We didn't intervene. Interrupting a desperate person with sharp tools in the middle of the night? Nope. We called the police instead. By the time officers arrived, Karen was gone. The cameras were severed, hanging like decapitated security heads. The officers documented the damage and filed another report. One of them muttered, "She's going to make this very easy for a judge." Jake nodded solemnly. "She's building her own prison brick by brick." I stayed awake until dawn, watching the street like a hawk. And when the sun finally rose, so did a new thought. Karen wasn't trying to get even. She was trying to erase the truth. The next few days were tense. Karen left me alone but stalked the neighborhood like she was searching for someone to blame for her problems. Her eyes were sharp and wild. Anyone who avoided her gaze was against her. Anyone who didn't was forced to listen to her rant. Then Thursday arrived with a new twist. Mr. Clipboard, the HOA president, showed up on my porch, holding paperwork with stiff discomfort. He explained that Karen was filing an official grievance against me for creating a hostile environment, public humiliation, and vigilante behavior. She was requesting fines, restrictions, camera removal, a formal apology, the works. I stared at him. "You've seen the footage," I said. "You know what happened." He sighed. "I do. But HOA rules require us to hear all grievances, no matter how imaginative." He pinched his nose. "We have called a special hearing for next week." Jake groaned. "She's like a video game boss who keeps regenerating." But I didn't panic. I smiled. Because Karen just made a fatal mistake. She wanted a hearing? Great. Now there was a stage. A place where every last piece of evidence could shine under fluorescent community lighting. I prepared. I compiled every file, every timestamp, every screenshot. I made backups upon backup. Jake helped me edit everything into the most devastating truth reel imaginable. Add dramatic music? He asked. No, I replied. Reality is embarrassing enough. As the hearing approached, Karen went into full character. She passed around flyers about privacy rights and neighborhood safety. She tried to convince people that porch cameras were the real threat. She spouted conspiracy theories about data collection. She even accused me of hacking her home network, while she'd been stealing my property for months. Some neighbors avoided her. Others humored her but didn't believe a word. Most simply waited. Drama this wild demands an audience. Finally, the night came. The HOA hall was packed. Even people who usually skipped meetings were present, sitting forward eagerly like viewers before a finale episode. Karen sat at the front table, arms crossed, expression set into a mask of righteous fury. She looked ready to deliver a monologue that would rewrite the narrative. I walked in with Jake beside me and sat calmly across from her. Mr. Clipboard opened the meeting, voice monotone. Karen, you may present your grievance. Karen stood dramatically. Her speech was polished, smooth, and completely detached from reality. She framed herself as a caring protector. She exaggerated everything I had done, turning porch security into surveillance tyranny. She claimed she was targeted, bullied, and discriminated against. She cried on cue again. Some sympathetic gasps rose from the couple of new neighbors who hadn't seen the infamous footage yet. Then the board asked me to respond. I didn't stand. I simply pressed play. The screen behind me lit up with a new compilation. Footage of Karen stealing from dozens of porches. Her dye-soaked meltdown. Her garage stash. The shed stash. Her cutting my cameras. Her posting slander on my mailbox. Every clip seamless, chronological, undeniable. The room sat silent. Frozen. A few jaws dropped so low they nearly hit the floor. Karen shot up from her seat. This is fake, she screamed. Deep fakes. AI manipulation. She pointed wildly at me. They're all lies. He's framing me. A voice rose from the back. It was the police officer neighbor. Ma'am, he said, stepping forward, we verified this footage personally. It's part of your active criminal case. Karen's expression fractured. Panic rippled across her face. Her breathing sharpened into quick gasps. She looked cornered by every consequence she'd tried to outrun. Then came the moment everything broke. She lunged for the projector, trying to yank the cord, destroy the evidence, erase the truth one last time. But the power strip was mounted high. She couldn't reach. Instead, she stumbled. Fell into the display table. The projector wobbled, the lights flickered, and she landed on the floor with a heavy thud. The room stared. A single novelty sock, one of mine, fell out of her hoodie pocket almost symbolically. Karen let out a raw, primal scream. It echoed through the shocked silence. This was no longer denial. This was a full public collapse. The HOA board cleared their throats awkwardly. Jake leaned in close. She's done, he whispered. But deep in my chest, something said. Not quite yet. Because falls like this? They always land on someone. And Karen wasn't the type to land on herself. Karen didn't show her face for 2 days after the HOA hearing disaster. Her blinds stayed sealed like bunker doors. The only sign of life was the flicker of her TV late at night and the occasional clatter of something slamming against a wall. Even Jake admitted, okay, maybe she finally got the picture. I wasn't so sure. The police were moving forward with charges. Theft, harassment, vandalism. Soon, she would be forced to face consequences she couldn't scream her way through. But cornered animals aren't predictable creatures. Karen had spent months building her image, her control over the neighborhood, her perceived superiority. Now all of it was crumbling like a poorly glued craft project. And people like Karen don't take losing well. On the third night, the street was quiet. Too quiet. Jake had gone home. I sat on my couch, eyes drifting between the TV and the live feed from my cameras. I'd replaced the cables Karen cut and added even more coverage just in case she decided to get creative again. At 1:43 a.m., an alert popped. Motion detected. Back fence. I tapped the notification and watched the screen. It was Karen. She climbed the fence with an awkward scramble, landing in my yard with a stumble. She wore dark clothes, hood up. One hand held a flashlight. The other held something sharp. A crowbar. She wasn't here for my cameras. She was here for me. Adrenaline punched through me. I called 911 instantly, keeping my voice low. The dispatcher asked if I felt threatened. I stared at the crowbar and said, "Absolutely." Karen approached my back door. She tried the handle, then pressed her face against the glass, scanning the room. My camera caught the warped distortion of her expression, twisted, determined, wild. She started prying at the lock. Metal scraped metal. Rage scraped sanity. I stepped out of view. No confrontation. No heroics. Just waiting. Every second stretched into an eternity. Then, a soft whoop of sirens from down the street. Karen froze. She bolted across the yard toward the fence but wasn't fast enough. Police caught her mid-climb. One officer pulled her down, the other grabbed the crowbar and forced her hands behind her back. She shrieked about conspiracies and entrapment, her voice echoing through the sleeping neighborhood. I stepped outside only when the officers waved me over. One asked, "You okay?" I nodded. Calm outwardly. Internally, my heart was running a marathon. Karen twisted in their grip. "You think this is over?" she spat. "He's the real criminal. He set me up. My life is ruined because of him." The officer guiding her toward the squad car said, "Ma'am, your life is ruined because you keep breaking the law." She screamed my name like a curse, face contorted with venom. Then the door slammed shut. The pink smear on her shoes was the last thing I saw before they drove her away. The street was silent again. But this time it was peace, not pressure. The next morning, neighbors gathered in little knots, whispering and shaking heads while pretending to check their mail or water plant. Jake dropped by with donuts and declared it victory breakfast. The Harpers brought back the last of the recovered packages with tearful apologies. I reassured them I blamed Karen, not them. Mrs. Harper hugged me like I'd rescued a kitten from a burning tree. Even Mr. Clipboard stopped by, looking significantly more human than usual. "The HOA appreciates your efforts in resolving this situation," he said, like the words physically pained him. "And we've formally approved motion to allow permanent external security cameras." Translation: I won. Quietly, bureaucratically, beautifully. Karen's house remained shut tight for weeks. The police had filed multiple charges. Her court date loomed. Rumor said she'd be selling the house, moving far away, maybe to a community where people didn't know her as the Porch Pirate of Pink Doom Lane. But the for sale sign never appeared. Instead, one morning, the driveway was filled with moving trucks. Furniture hauled out. Curtains removed. A single flicker of blonde hair moving inside like a ghost evacuating. Karen was leaving in disgrace. Neighbors gathered, not to celebrate loudly, but with a shared sense of relief. She slunk into a friend's car instead of a U-Haul, avoiding the street stairs. Head down. Shoulders tight. The once pristine SUV was long gone. So was the entitlement that fueled her reign. As the car pulled away, her eyes flicked toward my house, one final look. The hatred was still there. But behind it was something else. Fear. For the first time since this began, Karen understood the rule she never believed. Actions have consequences. Jake put a hand over his heart. Farewell, Karen. May you find a new community that hates you just as much. The neighborhood slowly reset to normal. Package delivery returned to being boring, which is exactly how it should be. People smiled more. Waved more. No paranoia. No porch stakeouts. Just peace. Weeks passed. Then one afternoon, I received a small envelope in the mail. No return address. No handwriting. Just printed text. Inside was a single photo. Karen's SUV. Still stained pink. Sitting in what looked like a police impound lot. On the back, scribbled in jagged pen strokes, one sentence. "You haven't seen the last of me." I stared at it for a few seconds. Then I smiled, calm, sarcastic, emotionally restrained, exactly who I'd always been throughout this chaos. Because here's the truth Karen never understood. Some people fight with anger. Some people fight with power plays. Some people fight with entitlement so loud it drowns out reason. But I fight with patience, with evidence, with logic, with a doorbell camera and the confidence of someone who doesn't need to raise his voice to be heard. Karen didn't lose because I humiliated her. Karen lost because she handed me the truth over and over again, and I used it better than she ever could. Jake later framed that photo like a piece of modern art. It hangs in my entryway. Subtle, hilarious, iconic. Whenever I grab a package off my porch now, I don't worry about footprints or missing deliveries. I just smile at the camera and say, "Catch of the day." And somewhere out there, maybe in a new cul-de-sac tormenting new neighbors, rage dialing a fresh HOA, Karen probably still tells a version of this story where she's the hero. That's fine. I've got the receipts. The pink SUV. The meltdown. The meltdown after the meltdown. The crowbar at my back door. The truth in full HD captured forever. The best part? The neighborhood remembers too. Every porch pirate joke. Every pink prank reference. Every whispered legend of a suburban villain who was defeated by dye and a doorbell camera. Karen thought she could control the narrative. But the internet and justice love a good plot twist. This one started with stolen socks. It ended with a permanent neon reminder that sometimes, karma comes in hot pink. And I'm not worried if she resurfaces. Because if she does, I'll be ready. Camera rolling.